You had a good month. You know you did because you can list it. The page you built, the post went out, the thing you fixed at 9 at night because it was bugging you, the new product you built in a week that fell apart twice. And then someone asks you, what did you build? And you can't answer. Today, why hard work stops compounding and what research says about the real cost of scattered goals. And of course, one sentence that will cut your task list in half by Wednesday. Welcome back to Amplify with Purpose, the podcast for leaders and business owners who want their influence to mean something and their work to last. I'm Odette, and this is where we have honest conversations about clarity, leadership, faith, and becoming the person your purpose requires. Let's get into today's conversation. Today isn't about one woman. It's about a pattern I have watched over and over for many, many years in coaching rooms, in client sessions, and honestly, in my own business more than once. And I want to describe it properly because when you're inside it, it's almost impossible to see. I want you to picture a woman. She's not one person. She's about 40 of them. And there is a decent chance that she's you. She's had a fortnight. Someone in her family needs her, and it's not optional. 2 days disappear before the week has even started. And she still moves. She gets stuck on a piece of work she's been overbuilding for weeks, and instead of grinding through it, she abandons it and builds a fresh one, cutting everything that doesn't solve the customer's problem. Under the circumstances, that's genuinely a good fortnight. Then you ask about the thing she launched, the one that's live, the one she's been posting about. How is it selling? Crickets. And that's the sentence I want to give you today, because I've now heard some version of it from more than one woman, more than I can count. I feel like I'm just throwing stuff at the wall, hoping that something sticks. And that's not strategy. That's a hope and a prayer. Notice what she's describing. This isn't a lazy woman. This isn't a woman with a discipline problem. Her hours are long. Her standards are high. She gets stuff done. The problem is that her product or service sits under one identity, her LinkedIn under another, her website's under a third, and none of them are pointing to each other. Every piece of content, nothing compounding. I want to share 3 things about that. Scattered goals don't just slow you down. They actively fight each other. And here's what I genuinely found useful or insightful in the research. We tend to imagine that having several goals is a neutral thing, a bit slower, sure, but basically additive. Work on 3 things, get a third of the progress on each. The goal system research says that's not actually what's happening. There is a body of work led by Ari Kruglansky and colleagues. The paper is called, it's published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2002 with the title that I absolutely love. It's called Forgetting All Else. What they found across 6 studies is something they call goal shielding. When you're genuinely committed to a goal, your mind automatically suppresses any alternatives. It pushes competing goals out of reach so that you can stay focused. And that's good news. That's the mechanism that helps you concentrate. The commitment does the filtering for you. Fantastic. But let's look at the flip side, because that's where most of us live. If your goals are unconnected or disconnected, if the course and the LinkedIn presence and the website are 3 separate ambitions that don't feed each other, then every one of them is actively inhibiting the other 2. They're not sharing attention, they're competing for it, and the loser gets completely suppressed. The nuance that matters most, and this is straight from the same research, the inhibition eases when the alternative goals helps the focal goal. Connected goals stop fighting each other. Disconnected goals don't. So the architecture isn't an admin exercise. It's the thing that decides whether your 3 priorities are a team or a cage fight. Next, effort has to be pointed at something to accumulate. That's the second truth. It's the one that makes the first one expensive. Effort accumulates. It just doesn't automatically compound. Compounding requires that the week's work makes next week's work easier or more valuable. And that only happens if they're connected. Think about the woman I described, what she actually had. A program sitting on a platform, a LinkedIn account with views and no buy-in, a website being built, and every one of those are an asset. But an asset that isn't feeding another asset is just another thing that you own. And the real diagnosis is one I hear almost word for word every single time. The product sits under my brand, and if I can't sell my brand, if no one knows my brand, then I'm talking into the void. That's it. That's the whole thing. Building products for a brand that hasn't been built, and you can't fix that with more products. This is what I mean when I talk about personal brand architecture. Not a logo, not a color palette, a structure that answers, what am I known for? Where does each platform sit inside that? And what is each piece feeding? Get those 3 answers and the content strategy practically writes itself. Skip them and you'll produce beautiful work forever and wonder why nothing lands. There are 2 categories, not 5. The third truth is a practical one. When I look at how the women I coach spend a week, almost everything falls into one of 2 buckets. Building, which is making the thing, the course, the page, the module, the system, and selling, business development. The conversations, the outreach, the follow-ups, the visibility that puts you in front of a person who could buy. Here's the pattern that I do see constantly. A woman spends 12 weeks in the first bucket, then gets to the end, launches, and here's nothing. Not because the thing is bad, but for 12 weeks, nobody was being brought towards it. Building without selling is slow and expensive. In the catalytic code, I wrote about the 5 elements that have to line up for you to build from who you actually are rather than who you think the room requires. And the honest truth about that framework is that most women get 4 of them right and the whole structure still doesn't hold because the elements aren't a checkbox that you tick. They're a system that has to be aligned. Alignment is exactly what's missing when someone tells me they're throwing things at the wall. Every individual element is fine, but the system isn't pointed anywhere. So, here's the ritual for the week. It sits right next to circle 3 from the previous episode, and it takes about 90 seconds. 1. Before you plan your week, write the one thing you're building this quarter. 1 sentence. If you need a comma, you don't have it yet, so try again. 2. Choose exactly 1 build activity for the week, the thing that makes the asset more real. 3. Choose exactly 1 sales activity, a conversation, an outreach, maybe it's a batch of emails, a follow-up, or a post that leads somewhere specific. Just 1. 4. Refuse the 3rd category. Anything that isn't feeding the build or sell goes to a separate list called later. And you're allowed to do it. You're not allowed to count it. And the reason this works isn't actually discipline. It's the goal shielding research. Once you've named the focal goal and connected the 2 activities to it, your brain stops treating them as rivals and then starts protecting them. You're not white knuckling to focus. You're moving competition. By the way, if you want the science on writing it down like this, Golowitz and Sheeran's 2006 meta-analysis pulled together 94 independent tests with more than 8,000 participants and found that specifying when and where you will act, and if then plan, produces an effect size of 0.65 on a goal attainment. That is a large effect for something that takes 90 seconds. Vague intentions don't survive Wednesday, specific ones do. So disconnected goals don't share your attention. They actually suppress each other. Effort accumulates, but it only compounds when it's pointed in the same direction. And a week has room for one build and one sell, not 5 of each. The woman I described at the start doesn't need to work harder. Nobody who loses half a fortnight to something that isn't optional and still ships needs to work harder. She needs the architecture underneath the work, because once that's in place, the same effort starts producing a very different result. If you recognized yourself in the hope and the prayer statement, if you're producing genuinely good work that isn't compounding, that's exactly why I wrote the Catalytic Code. The book will help you uncover what's really driving your decisions and show you how to bring the 5 elements into alignment. It's linked in the show notes, and it's the place I'd encourage you to start. If, however, you've reached the point where you know you don't need more information, you need someone to help you apply it to your own leadership, your business, your career, that's exactly why I created the Catalytic Leadership Program. It's designed for the experienced professional who knows they're capable of more but want to close the gap between where they are today and the leader they are becoming. Together, we'll uncover what's creating friction, strengthen foundations that actually matter, and help you lead with greater clarity, confidence, and consistency. You'll find the details in the show notes, along with information about how to apply. And this week's question is simple. What's one thing you are building this quarter? One sentence. No sub-clauses. Send it to me. If it has a comma in it, I'll send it back. Kindly. If Amplify with Purpose served you today, I'd really appreciate it if you'd follow the show, leave a quick review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Every share helps these conversations reach leaders who are ready to build something that lasts. Until next time, remember this. When you lead with purpose and deliver with consistency, you don't just create success. You create impact that outlasts you.